The decision by Spirit and Frontier to terminate their deal was announced while Spirit shareholders were still voting on the proposal. Spirit had repeatedly delayed the vote as it looked to persuade shareholders to support the deal. A combination of Spirit with either Frontier or JetBlue would create the country's fifth largest airline. Hilary Barsky, Fox News.
The U.S. Geological Survey reports a 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the northwestern coast of Chile. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Boss 104, The Point, and Star 101 are bringing you the Back to the 80s and 90s Throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Antigua, Saturday, August 6th.
Come down and get on the dance floor as I, DJ Daryl Lazama, get on the turntables, giving you the best of the 80s, 90s, and more.
Star 101, The Point, and Boss 104 will be in the house.
Yo, DJ, pump it up some more.
Plus, we have all kinds of cool stuff to give to you.
Free food giveaways,
Buckets of beer,
T-shirts, and hourly cash prizes.
the 90s Throwdown dance off.
Back to the 80s and 90s Throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Antigua behind Circle K Beachside. The party is from 8 p.m. to midnight, so come down and get your groove on. Special thanks to JV International Safety Equipment Company and Lolita Kamet from Hoffaday Realty.
Hoffaday, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns the property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not today, anyhow. Now, let's start out the show with Jemmy Ikotny. The Daily News actually has an editorial today. Not a hard-hitting editorial, not a stunning editorial, but nevertheless an editorial. The title is Our View, Rev and Tax Facility Lease Almost Up. Organized for Next Move. Wednesday's legislative budget hearing for the Department of Rev Tax revealed that the facility and its personnel will need to begin planning for its next home as the agency enters into the last year of its lease with its current landlord. At a price of $1.37 million per year, the terms of the agency's 15-year lease on the Barrigada warehouse, the government has spent more than $20 million in rental costs for a building it will never own. We believe Senators Joe San Augustine, Joanne Brown, and Tello were on the right track when they say it's time to move on and find a permanent space for Rev and Tax, as it serves as a central operating role in government finances. It's only right and responsible to establish a permanent and secure home for the agency that carries out some of the most important services for residents. From monitoring and collecting the millions in monthly gross receipts taxes from the island's businesses to the massive income tax operations it must handle annually to the licensing of businesses, drivers, and nonprofits, the functions of Rev Tax are incomprehensible to the average citizen, especially when you go up there and try to do something. It's incomprehensible. Rev tax has no doubt improved dramatically under its current leadership, despite the unavoidable circumstances of Wuhan virus pandemic. It's high time the government looks seriously into investing in a state-of-the-art facility structured to fit the agency's changing needs. Whether it's building an entire new facility with the appropriate technological functions to support more online services or getting creative with spaces already under government purview, we support and encourage this move to find a permanent, cost-effective plan to safely house the workforce and functions of the Department of Rev and Tax. Now is the time for leaders to get organized with long-term plans that focus on getting creative with resources and solutions that will shift GovGuam's tendency to get stuck in expensive quick-fix solutions like rental space and divert valuable tax dollars toward investing in facilities that will be owned and operated by the government it serves. Well, yeah, it's a real editorial, makes a lot of sense. Not so bad after a long drought. My own comments. I suppose what we're going to have to do is the same thing that we've done with other buildings. We're going to have find a company, a private company that will finance it, build it, and maintain it for us for the next 30 years. Because we certainly don't have the financial capabilities to build a well-constructed doghouse right now, notwithstanding all of the federal money that's flowed in here. Well, let's see how it works out.
Maybe Eagle Field is available.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, they decided to put the utilities, this Consolidated Commission on Utilities out there in Magilo. Seems to be working well for them. We used to have a central administration building right downtown in the Plaza de España. Remember that? And there was a time when every single government of Guam office was in that building. The first floor was all window services, windows that came up and down. Of course, there's no air conditioning. So no matter what you did, you went to one of those windows and transacted your business. Centrally located. Would you believe, Jose, that back in those days, a person got one bill for power, water, and telephone? Yeah. It was like a yellow postcard. Probably didn't cost much to put it together. You took that yellow postcard and took it to a treasurer and paid it. All the utility bills on one piece of paper. What a modern concept. What a significant advance, right? I think.
And the solution was to split it all up and hire more employees.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think they made a movie about how that building was done. It starred that guy, Michael, what's his name? The name of the movie was Back to the Future.
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future, yeah. Okay, here's what I got on the card. I didn't get to it yesterday. The next item that I would have gotten to yesterday was Governor versus Chamorros. Of course, we had so much fun yesterday that I kind of hated to see the show end when we had the first meeting of of the Blue Stars Club here. Lee Weber, Helen Middlebrook, and Troy Torres. Very interesting. And of course, I had Troy sitting over here on my far right. Lee was over here on my left. And in the middle, guess who sat in the chair?
Mrs. Middlebrook.
Mrs. Middlebrook, the mom in the middle, Helen Middlebrook. Very nice people doing real good work for the community with the stuff that they write. Okay, so after Governor versus Chamorros, I've got environmental wackos versus us. I think perhaps, we talk about back to the soil and being, and excuse me. Wow. I had a frog in my throat there.
Environmental issues choke you up.
I guess that's it. So we seem to have a bumper crop of environmental wackos here. I think we're just stuck with them, though. Next on the card is Co San Nicolas versus Ceruanos, and Michigan versus Harbaugh, which I started a couple days ago and just barely got into. Okay, starting out with, of course, systemic racism. And I think everybody's familiar with the analogy now, so I don't have to belabor the point. Now I got the hiccups. Wow.
How do you get rid of hiccups, Bob? Because I hear nothing scares you.
Thank you, Jose. That's worth having the hiccups over. Yeah. Okay, so here's Governor versus Chamorros. This ran in the Post a couple days ago. The title is Hope Cristobal, recognized with MAGA Haga Award. Our very own Hope Cristobal. And can you key up Hope just to give the folks a little refresh recollections as to
Let's give it
how
a moment here.
Yeah, how much? Excuse me. I don't want to play it right away, but I want to play it in a minute. So here's how it goes. Governor Lilian Guerrero presented former Senator Hope Alvarez Cristobal with the MAGA Haga Award. The award recognizes Cristobal's legacy of distinguished dedication. Wow. I got to take a break and get a drink of water, Jose. Maybe that'll do it. I used to be able to do it. I put a knife in my mouth and then drink water over that knife. So I'm going to try it. Yeah, Jose, unless Chuck Norris snuck into the building, there probably isn't anybody here that's going to scare me, so I'll have to try the water. So there we go. Governor Lilian Guerrero presented former Senator Hope Alvarez Cristobal with the Maga Haga Award. The award recognizes Cristobal's legacy of distinguished dedication and valuable contributions to the pursuit of peace and justice for the Chamorro people and the island of Guam. Well, there's one part of this sentence that I agree with. She's only pursuing peace for the Chamorro people, not for a white person who came here because of the system of systemic racism, who has no rights on the island at all. Born just after World War II, Cristobal's life was shaped by the militarization of the island, of course, which galvanized her drive to pursue justice and peace, according to text associated with the award. Growing up, the foundation of Cristobal's strength was rooted in two significant women, her mother and her godmother. After receiving her Master of Education degree in School Administration and Supervision from the University of Guam in 1987, she served as an educator on Guam for more than a decade. Cristobal eventually pursued a seat in the 23rd Guam legislature following a stint as a senator, because she didn't get reelected. Cristobal returned to the classroom, serving as an adjunct professor of Guam history at the university. There's no telling how much damage she did there. Cristobal's commitment to the Chamorro people led her on a lifelong journey of confronting militarization, colonialism, and peaceful citizens. Beep, beep. Yeah. She was a founding member of various organizations formed to raise awareness about injustices and colonialism on Guam and address self-determination efforts for the island. Over the years, Cristobal has continued to participate in integral roles in many demilitarization organizations and various community and government boards. In other words, she's top-notch when it comes to grievance politics, Jose. Among her many accomplishments in the legislature, Cristobal established the rules and regulations for the Chamorro Land Trust Act with the late Senator Angel Santos and created the Commission on Decolonization and the Chamorro Registry. Cristobal's unwavering commitment to building of Chamorro nationhood and promotion of self-determination has shown her outstanding dedication to improving the future of Guam for generations to come. This is, quote, "This is an award that comes with a lot of responsibility to the community," stated Cristobal. "After all these years, I thought I was embedded into the community, but this award makes it clear that I have a lot more left to do." Boy, I can't wait. In 2020, Cristobal was petitioner alongside the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization to enter the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in a filing of Hope Alvarez Cristobal and the Chamorro people versus the United States, which specifically addressed the ongoing military buildup occurring in Guam in conjunction with impediments to exercise the right to self-determination. In light of her lifelong contributions to uplifting indigenous people worldwide, she was presented with the Public Citizen of the Year Award by the National Association of Social Workers, Guam chapter, in 2011. Nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2022 and recognized with numerous other awards. Cristobal is married to her husband of more than 50 years, Enrico Adrian Cristobal, with whom she has 5 children and 6 grandchildren. That's Hope Cristobal. So the reason I titled this Governor versus Chamorros is that, you know, when you see people who are presented with awards, the presumption is that whatever group they came from, they're kind of the best of the group. These are the tops. So people who see Hope in action are bound to say, so she's the best the Chamorros have? Man, if she's the best, I certainly hate to see the worst ones. So let's have a little taste of Hope Cristobal, Jose.
Colonizer. You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest or what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to yell.
I'm an indigenous Chamorro. I have more rights here than you are.
Okay.
You came here because of the structures of colonialism.
We'll play the whole video on Monday, but I just wanted to see where her head is at, and then here's why she got the award. Cristobal's unwavering commitment to the building of Chamorro nationhood and the promotion of self-determination has shown her outstanding dedication to improving the future of Guam for generations to come. This is her idea of improving Guam. You're a white man. You have no rights here. Get off our island. Yeah, in 2020, Cristobal was petitioner alongside the unrepresented nations, etc., to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in a filing of Hope Alvarez Cristobal and the Chamorro people versus the United States, which specifically addressed the ongoing military buildup in conjunction with impediments to the exercise of self-determination. In light of her lifelong contributions to uplifting indigenous people worldwide. So this is how you uplift indigenous people.
I did not feel uplifted.
No. Yeah, so when you scrape the paint and varnish off it, what you have here is an extremely bitter person who has specialized in grievance politics all her life. What do we call this? Now, you know, you could see how she interacts with people, where she's really coming from, what her idea of self-determination really is. So we're right back to this, aren't we? Yeah, we're right back to this, because the facts are Hope Cristobal is a hateful person who specializes in grievance politics, obviously an extreme racist. However, the narrative is, like the rice is red, the narrative is she's an outstanding person. We need to give her an award and recognize all her accomplishments. Yeah, congratulations, Governor. You really picked a winner here. Now, I mentioned this when I run the Hope Cristobal screen test on Monday. Hope is the face and voice of the separatist movement here on Guam, of all those folks who would want Guam to become a separate political entity from the United States, to be a separate, sovereign, independent country, independent of the United States. And if you ever wonder what these folks are like, that's what they look like. That's their thought process. So, you know, if you're interested in racism, there you go. That's exactly who you want to remember. Hope has been recognized. Her Chamorro-ness has been recognized because she is the chairman of the Chamorro Language Commission. So once again, you'd think that they would put really their best folks in these positions of authorities. Well, if Hope is the best, I'll leave it to your imagination as to what the worst ones are like. I lost my Facebook here. Let me see if I can get it back. Okay, let's take a short break here while I'm trying to get my Facebook back.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Boss 104, The Point, and Star 101 are bringing you the Back to the 80s and 90s Throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Antigua, Saturday, August 6th.
Come down and get on the dance floor as I, DJ Daryl Lazama, get on the turntables, giving you the best of the 80s, 90s, and more.
Star 101, The Point, and Boss 104 will be in the house.
Yo, DJ, pump it up some more.
Plus, we have all kinds of cool stuff to give to you.
Free food giveaways,
buckets of beer,
T-shirts, and hourly cash prizes.
For the 90s Throwdown Dance Off.
Back to the 80s and 90s Throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Antigua behind Circle K Beachside. The party is from 8 p.m. to midnight, so come down and get your groove on. Special thanks to JV International Safety Equipment Company and Lolita Kamet from Hoffaday Realty.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are back again. Just let me take a peek here and see what reactions we got from the recognition of Hope Cristobal. Let's see here. Is Hope Cristobal related to Bobby Alvarez by any chance? Alvarez is not a very large family, is it? And Gina says, Lonnie Sala says, I believe so, Gina. Let's see. Richard V. Leon, well, not to seem so dumb. Let's see, that's a different subject. Gina Marie, as you were, Lonnie Sala says, being a Chamorro, I'm not related to her. Call me out of that one. Gina Marie Tenorio call. Oh my gosh, it all makes perfect sense now. Talk about roots growing up and branches too in this political realm. It's just all making perfect sense. What's going on with Lou and the Josh camp? It's my island, Ray. I was born here. Harvey Agnes says, Commissar Cristobal. Gina Marie, now we can see where this learned behavior stems from. Richard V. Leon, Hope is just a crystal ball. Bonnie Suba, give her that award is like everyone getting a participation trophy. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I think to know Hope, you know, the old song, to know him is, well, it's not to love her. I think to see her, to see this video, you really get a good handle on what she's all about. And perhaps the others are not as strident, but it's all based on the same grievance policy that causes her to be so angry. All right, next on the card is environmental wackos versus the United States. Forever chemical levels in military water wells exceed new safety thresholds. Levels of two toxic forever chemicals known as PFOS and PFOA detected in military water wells across the island last year are far beyond the levels that the Environmental Protection Agency now considers safe. That's based on water quality reports issued by the Air Force and Navy. One well at Naval Hospital, which was shut down in August 2020, at one point detected PFOS at levels 89,000 times higher than what the PFA's interim health guidance considers safe. PFOS and PFOA are part of a group of chemicals called PFAS. How do you pronounce that? PFAS, PFAS, PFOS, PFOA. You got it, Jose.
It's all together.
Yeah, they're slow to break down and have been linked to negative effects on the human immune and cardiovascular system, lower birth rate, and cancer, according to the EPA. The agency issued interim health advisories for PFAS last month as new science showed the chemicals are dangerous at much lower levels than previously believed, according to a fact sheet from the agency. New health advisory levels place the health risk threshold at close to 0 parts per trillion, compared to 216 threshold of 70 parts per trillion. Information about testing of the public water system came from EPA, Guam EPA, and GWA. You're probably wondering why I'm going into this, right? You'll find out. And once again, we have a news outlet that obviously is really helping somebody out here, right? Yeah.
We're on the same page there, Bob.
Yeah. Quote, my concern is that given our size and the proximity to many bases, our community is likely to be the most affected jurisdiction in the U.S. for PFAS contamination, if elected. I will make sure that Guam is treated as a national priority for PFAS remediation, and the GWA and GPA have all the resources they need to address this looming problem, Juan Pat 10 said.
Looming equals it's an election year.
Exactly. Juan Pat 10. Now, this article has 6 pages because there are so many pictures in it. I wonder if I got all the pages. Juan Pat said, I'll skip over, the scare tactics part of it. Juan Pat 10 said the contamination may exist outside the fence, affecting Guam Waterworks Authority wells. She said she's working to get more information about testing of the public water system from Guam EPA and Guam Waterworks. My concern is that given our size and proximity to many bases, etc. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be a simpleton voter here and say, okay, we're talking about local wells. We're talking about Guam EPA. So why do we have to send you all the way to D.C.?
Exactly.
To find information.
Now, the one picture that I did copy, I think the old picture is worth 1,000 words. It's a picture taken inside the session hall, the new session hall, and it shows somebody's back. Former Speaker Judy Juan Pat 10, and what's her name? Paris, Senator Sabina Paris, the in-house environmental wacko at the legislature. So Senator Juan Pat 10, Speaker Juan Pat 10 is telling you, I'm going to be your environmental wacko. If you want to send an environmental wacko to Washington, send me. Now, I have a a tendency when, as politicians, I tend to expect the worst from people. And what I see here is a good pretext for Judy Won-Pat-Ten to beat up on the U.S. military and, of course, beat up on the United States in the process. Get out her Hope Cristobal shoes, start talking about self-determination, etc., because people don't ordinarily start out with the independence rap. They kind of phase into it. They go into it on a pretext. Yeah, the military's pouring all this stuff into our water. It's no wonder we have so many people that are dying of this, that, and the other thing, right? Judy Won-Pat-Ten. Now, if you've forgotten why I have changed her name, the authority vested in me as the host of Tall Tales, why I have given her a new name, Judy Won-Pat-Ten, is because she was the leader of the Won-Pat-Ten at the great salary smash and grab. Just to refresh your recollection, during the Calvo administration, Eddie Calvo was off island. Ray Tenorio was the acting governor. Ray Tenorio sent a salary increase bill. The governor can introduce bills here to the legislature and call the legislature into special session. The bill gave him, the governor, some directors salary increases, and it gave senators a $30,000 salary increase retroactive to the beginning of the session. This happened in November of the second year of the session. So we're talking about big bucks here, right? Now, this is the kind of thing that you would expect a fair amount of debate on. Everybody, including me. I'd like to have, a 30, let me think here. Increased it by 30 for, almost a $60,000 windfall. I'd like to be able to sit here and watch $60,000 come plummeting down to from the heavens and plop into my hands. Who wouldn't? But if this it came before the legislature, wouldn't you expect that somebody'd say, hey, wait a minute, this is not fiscally responsible. This is not politically responsible. Now, some of the other details here at the beginning of the session, the legislature, they gave out several increases. In fact, they took mayors up to 75 grand, and they gave other increases, but they decided we're not going to give ourselves a raise. The ink was hardly dry on their reelection certificates when Ray Tenorio sent this special bill over. It took almost an hour for that bill to pass. And since there were no amendments to the bill didn't need to be engrossed. So that same day, it was winging its way back to Ray Tenorio, who signed it on the same day. This was in November, probably around the 15th of November. By the payday before Christmas, these huge chunks of money showed up in senators' checks, notwithstanding that we know the government is always very slow pay. Who was the speaker at the time? Judy Won-Pat-Ten. Judy and 9 other people constituted the Won-Pat. 10 of them went for it. 5 didn't. Now, the rules of the legislature say that you can't pass any bill unless it's had a public hearing. Now, can you imagine who would have come out of the woodwork for a hearing on a bill to give those guys that kind of raise? Everybody and his cousin would have come down and testified against that, including me. I probably would have come down and testified, gone outside and put on some kind of a disguise and come back in and done it again. But they didn't have a public hearing because there is a rule that says the speaker can sign a certification that the public health, etc., are invoked, are such that we have to do this without a public hearing. So Senator Won-Pat-Ten signed that, right? No, she didn't. She just brought the bill forward. No certificate, no public hearing.
Active participation.
Exactly. No active participation.
No, she had active participation.
She certainly did, yeah. and that was it. And she has forevermore been known as Judy Wonpat 10. Now, there were a couple of right-thinking people involved there. One of them was the much maligned Michael San Nicolas. I'm going to get to an article in the Post about Michael. I'm sure they'll mention this, right? But Michael San Nicolas, as I recall, wasn't there that day. And he introduced a bill to roll the excessive increase back. 4 others joined him. They were called the San Nicolas Posse. In the entire next session of the legislature, they were not able to get the bill rolled back. Now, you saw quarterbacking. You saw National Football League quarterbacking there. A lot of, roll calls, passing, etc. And they were really clever because they structured it in such a manner that every part of the Wonpat 10 got to vote to roll back the raises at one time or another. But there was always a poison pill in the bill that came up for a vote. As an example, one bill rolled all of them back, including the mayors. Well, who's going to vote to roll them now? So, you're a clever senator. There are 15 people there. You see that first roll call come down the line, and you see that 8 people have voted against it. Or that, let me see. Yeah, 8 people have voted against it. You vote yes. I voted to roll back my own salary, just that the votes weren't there. So you saw this hand played over and over again. So I think by the time we're done, everybody got a chance to say, well, yeah, that was bad, but, I voted to roll my own salary back. And this all comes back to Judy Wonpat 10. Now, I don't think she's going to be able to pull this off in Congress because there are just too many of them. And even Joe Biden isn't dumb enough to send something like this over and ask him to vote on it without having a public hearing. But this is Forever Chemicals Judy Wonpat 10. Now think about that when it's time to vote for Washington delegate. Now there are 2 others that are running. One of the others is Jim Moylan. And I guess I have to explain this because not everybody knows this, but there is a term, franking privileges. Now, franking privileges doesn't mean you have the ability, you have a license to be impolite and just say whatever's on your mind and be so frank that people get angry with you. That's not what it means. Franking privileges means that you don't have to pay the expenses of your postage. So I have hypothesized that the only reason that Jim Moylan is running for Congress is not because he wants to be in Congress, but, he cranks out so many letters every day. He's only running for the franking privileges. Where's that rim shot?
And postage has gone up.
Yeah. He doesn't have to worry about forever stamps. So as long as he's there, he could write the governor a dozen letters every single day, right? Okay, and then the third one is Talina Nelson. I told you about Talina Nelson and Public Bill 82 from the and on and on and on. I don't see there's very much to recommend Talina to be our Washington rep.
Maybe you have to decode the Organic Act to find it.
Maybe.
Every other word.
Yeah, but Nelson is a passer, which again works against her. But the one good thing about her, and this is a really good thing about her, is she is anti-abortion. So that's what I'm going to tuck in my brain when I go in to start voting. I'm not going to, I somehow don't think Judy Wonpat 10 fills the ticket. Now, of course, if you understand legacy politics and the idea that politics here is hereditary, Judy Wonpat's father was a non-voting delegate to the House of Representatives. Judy Wonpat's father was a speaker of the legislature on several occasions. Judy Wonpat was a speaker. Judy Wonpat's son, Melvin Wonpat, is the president of the Chamorro Affairs Commission or whatever it is, and also the Chamorro Independence Commission. So you really need to think about voting for Judy 1, Pat 10 because, it's inherited. Public office, well, it's not, but it really should be inherited. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so much for Judy 1, Pat 10.
Bob, if I can make another connection to this story.
Certainly.
Which I am curious of why the local media is not curious. Now, we had the plastic ban bill signed into law in, 2020 was it?
Uh-huh.
And curiously enough, and people should know this because all these canvassers have been going around the neighborhoods, if you don't answer your door or open up your gate, this certain campaign will tie a bunch of pamphlets inside a plastic bag to your fence or door.
Whoa.
Okay, not a big deal, Jose? Yeah, but this campaign comes from the same administration that signed that plastic bill law. So just make these connections, people, of how we're being sold a bunch of fluff, and then nothing's followed through.
Exactly.
So, and these plastic bags are not recyclable. They're pretty thick, and I didn't ask for them to be tied to my fence or my door or anywhere else that was unsolicited.
They're probably not big enough to use for your trash either, are they?
No, they're like newspaper-sized bags, very thick.
Nice. Well, thanks for sharing that, Jose.
But we're not allowed to have them for our groceries.
Of course not. Yeah. Who do we think we are? Let's take a short break, Jose.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle. Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits. Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
All right, so here we are. We got about 8 more minutes till the big halftime show. My remedy worked, Jose. You notice I'm not sitting here hiccuping. So I will share. You take a glass of water and you put a knife in your mouth and then you drink that glass of water over the knife. You can be careful. You're going to spill a little bit on your shirt, but it's a pretty good remedy for hiccups. Okay, next we go to Co San Nicolas versus Cirujanos. Now, once again, a little background here. Cirujanos are held in very high regard by local folks here, by Chamorros. And the institution of the Cirujano goes way back before Spanish times. The Cirujanos are the folks who know where to go out and find the amot Chamorro. And they know how to prepare the amot Chamorro, and they know what kind of amot Chamorro to give somebody for any particular chutney that the person might have. That's what some Cirujanos do. And they're also supposed to have sort of a psychiatric dimension. They're supposed to be able to work with people who perhaps have personality defects, character flaws, other things that make it difficult for them to interact with other people. Well, maybe he should go to the Cirujano, right? Now, I've never, ever heard anybody badmouth a Cirujano. There's a certain amount of skepticism, primarily coming from Westerners, you know. There's a certain amount of skepticism, but there are people who say, you know, anay malango na ipatgon, gwita na ipatgon amot Chamorro, ta homlo ipatgon agupa. Tadzaguaha and I, yeah.
You hear that a lot.
They'll say that, and I don't think people are making up all of these things. So, anything that goes on for a long, long time that has a trial and error dimension, oftentimes you come up with valuable things. But the Suruhano, if a person introduces himself or is introduced as a Suruhano, there's a certain amount of respect that goes with that, because these are people who are seen as skilled, selfless, caring, etc. Until Ko San Nicolas came along. Now, just let me read this article about Ko San Nicolas. Local spiritual healer Frank Ko San Nicolas thanked the jury one by one on Wednesday as they executed Superior Court. The jury acquitted San Nicolas of all charges related to allegations made by a woman who claimed he had raped her in a remote cave in May of 2020. It's very overwhelming. It affected me and my family and also my attorney for 2 years. This is nasty. This is catty. I wonder how it affected his wife. It took the jury 3 days to deliberate before they returned with a unanimous not guilty verdict. We are extremely grateful to the jury. They didn't believe the victim. When the jury says they don't believe the victims, that's a strong sign to the government that they better reconsider their cases, said defense attorney Jay Areola. We look forward to further getting this job back at the Port Authority, where he was unlawfully terminated by management there because of these accusations. Now, how was it unlawful?
It's a personal matter.
Yeah.
Personnel.
Well, if there were these accusations and he was terminated because of it, and the procedures were followed, he may not have liked it, but it's not unlawful. And let's turn on the Law and Order notebook here, Jose. If he went through the process and through the Civil Service Commission, then the burden that the government had was substantial evidence. Because when a government employee it is alleged that a government employee has committed misconduct, and the misconduct is sufficient to charge him with a crime, it's not preponderance of the evidence or clear and convincing evidence, which is the normal standard for personnel actions. It's only substantial evidence. So that's all the port had to put on was substantial evidence to fire the guy. Now, if a person gets fired because there's an allegation that he committed a crime, he later on goes to trial, and I don't want to hear the word exonerated, because there's no exoneration. Courts don't find you innocent. They find you not guilty. There's a big difference between innocent and not guilty. So if a person goes to court, is prosecuted, and the jury brings back a not guilty verdict, it's not automatic that he gets his job back. If management doesn't want to bring him back, and the procedure has gone all the way through, then there's no way you could force management to bring him back. Let's say that he was fired. Let's say he appealed to the Civil Service Commission. Civil Service Commission sustained the port. He appeals to the Superior Court. Superior Court sustains the Civil Service Commission. He says, the hell with it, I'm not going to do this anymore. There's no way you could force the port to take him back, even though he was found guilty in the criminal charges. Okay, we'll come back to Cole right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
It's GDP Day. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. In just a few hours from now, the Commerce Department will release its report on the country's output of goods and services for the second quarter. Fox's Jill Natos live in Washington.
The federal government releases the numbers on gross domestic product for the period from April to June this morning. Some economists say it may show the economy shrank for the second quarter in a row, and that spells recession. But the U.S. has seen some strength when it comes to wages and jobs numbers. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says that leads him to believe the U.S. is not in a recession.
There are just too many areas of the economy that are performing, too well. And of course, that would point to the labor market.
The latest numbers from the Fed show a 3.6% unemployment rate in the U.S. That's the lowest it's been since the 1950s. Jack?
Thanks, Jill. Interest rates going up again. The Fed announcing another 3/4 of a point hike yesterday. West Virginia's Joe Manchin, one of two Democrat senators who blocked the $1 trillion Build Back Better spending plan earlier this year, has now agreed with Senate Majority Leader Schumer to support a smaller spending bill, which they're calling the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022.
The bill would provide hundreds of billions of dollars towards energy and security and climate change programs. Both senators say it will be fully paid for by raising the corporate minimum tax on big companies to 15%.
Fox's David Spont. Republican Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn says the bill should be called Build Back Broke. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says he's ready to use nuclear weapons in potential military conflicts with the U.S. and South Korea, saying in a speech to Korean War veterans the country's nuclear war deterrent is ready to mobilize. South Korea has boosted its military capacity to cope with escalating North Korean nuclear threats. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professional at Security Title. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Two former Minneapolis police officers have been sentenced for their roles in George Floyd's death.
Former Minneapolis police officer Tu Tao, who was tasked with holding back a crowd in 2020, gets a half year more in prison than the 3-year sentence handed down to former officer J. Alexander King. The rookie cop who helped restrain George Floyd is now wrapping up the federal case over civil rights violations. Another former rookie officer, Thomas Lane, last week was sentenced to 2.5 years after he also pled guilty in the state's case, for which King and Tao have pled not guilty and still face trial. All following the federal and state case against Derek Chauvin, who held his knee on George Floyd's neck and who was sentenced to over 2 decades in prison. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Secretary of State Blinken confirms he's offered Russia a deal aimed at bringing home WNBA star Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan, another American jailed in Moscow. The U.S. reportedly offering to trade a convicted Russian arms dealer. A defense contractor in Hawaii and his wife have been charged with identity theft for allegedly living for decades under the names of 2 dead children from Texas, and old photos show the couple wearing KGB uniforms. Russia spelling out plans for its own space station.
Russian space officials telling their American counterparts Moscow will remain on board the International Space Station until its new outpost is built in 2028. Russia's space agency caught NASA off guard when announcing it would end its space station partnership after 2024. But NASA's space operations chief tells Reuters it's still business as usual for the two agencies. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre on Tuesday reaffirmed America's commitment to the station.
To ensure the safe operation of the ISS and the astronauts who are on board.
The space station was one of the last areas of cooperation between Moscow and Washington, their rocky relationship souring further after the invasion of Ukraine.
Fox's Steve Rappaport. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Boss 104, The Point, and Star 101 are bringing you the Back to the 80s and 90s Throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Antigua, Saturday, August 6th.
Come down and get on the dance floor as I, DJ Daryl Lazama, get on the turntables, giving you the best of the 80s, 90s, and more.
Star 101, The Point, and Boss 104 will be in the house.
Yo, DJ, pump it up some more.
Plus, we have all kinds of cool stuff to give to you.
Free food giveaways,
buckets of beer,
T-shirts, and hourly cash prizes.
For the 90s Throwdown dance off.
Back to the 80s and 90s Throwdown at the Hermit Crab Beach Bar and Grill in Antigua behind Circle K Beachside. The party is from 8 p.m. to midnight, so come down and get your groove on. Special thanks to JV International Safety Equipment Company and Lolita Kamet from Hoffaday Realty.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Okay, so here we are back after another one of those really, really great halftime shows, and I'm still working on this item on the card, San Nicolas versus Suruhanos. And I spent a little time explaining what a Suruhano is, what a Suruhano does, how a Suruhano fits into the community. And Mr. San Nicolas here pulls himself out as a Suruhano. And well, let me go back to the story here. San Nicolas was a police officer at the Port Authority. At the time, 2 criminal sexual conduct cases were filed against him in the Superior Court. And what he did, he told the women in these 2 cases that he was a Suruhano and that he could provide some sort of faith healing for them. And in the process, he had intercourse with each of them. Each of them accused him of rape. Each of the cases went to trial, and juries came back with not guilty verdicts in both cases. The details of what Mr. San Nicolas did, you know, I don't think, well, maybe, I don't think the governor is going to give him a MAGA Haga award, but then again, you never know, right? Yeah, I wouldn't say that San Nicolas, from what I learned about him in these 2 trials, does not fit my definition of a model citizen. He was a police officer at the port. So now he's got some bad feelings here. He feels like he got screwed. And this is what he said. I encourage the men out there to be careful with people like this. He means the prosecution. To be careful with people like this. They will do anything to bring you down. San Nicolas said, I am very grateful for my attorney and his firm, my family, and also that also supported me and was with me during these 2 years of hardship. Now I'm ready to move on. I also want to thank God and the manana of my ancestors for this victory today. San Nicolas' family was in tears and cheered for him as he walked out of the courtroom. He's such an admirable guy. Neither his accuser nor her family attended the reading of the verdict. Although we are extremely disappointed by today's jury verdict, I want to thank the victim for her courage in coming forward so that no one else is victimized by Mr. San Nicolas. The Attorney General's office won't stop fighting to protect the public from sexual predators, said Assistant Attorney General Grant Olin. Prosecutors and another woman unrelated to the case testified during her trial, alleging she was also sexually assaulted by San Nicolas. That's 3. Owen said, I don't have any information as to that at this time. Throughout the trial, former prosecutor Rochelle Canto and Areola exchanged multiple insults, causing numerous delays with the defense requesting a mistrial. Canto announced her resignation from the AG's office during jury deliberations. This is one of the toughest trials I've ever had to do, primarily because of the Office of the Attorney General. The word vindictive prosecution, malicious prosecution, ineffective prosecution rings out through this proceeding, Areola said. It's truly disappointing that the prosecutor's office would go to such length to throw not only the book, but the entire encyclopedia set at San Nicolas in order to take a conviction, obtain a conviction beginning with a stripper who claimed she was raped when she agreed to a Nuru massage. Now you got to go back and read the accounts of the trial to find out what a Nuru massage is. Basing all their cases on that one victim, their Me Too movement has collapsed. Just goes to show everybody should be very careful when people make these allegations of criminal sexual conduct and Me Too movement. So that's what happened. San Nicolas had 2 not guilty verdicts, so in the eyes of the law, it's over. In the eyes of the court of public opinion, at least from what I read, it doesn't come out very well. And the question I'm asking is, where are the other Sorojanos? Do they condone this kind of activity? When people say, you know, little girl, I'm going to take you to the Sorojano, would someone stand up and, wait a minute, hold on? Or we just say, well, it's okay. It's a strange thing that everybody is so quiet about this.
That's a good question, because just, I want to say about 10 years ago, there was a big hoopla about the Sorojano, or Sorojana. They did a joint book with Saipan also. I think the book had English, Carolinian, and Chamorro references, or side by side.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if that technique is inside that book, but it, and again, because it was through UOG, is run by a lot of females, you know. And there is also a Sorojano type house or guma up there at Lanatla, the Chamorro village up there.
Yeah.
And so there, it's not like there's lack of voices, but the silence is, like they say, deafening.
The silence is deafening, unless they say, well, yeah, that's one of the fringe benefits of being a Sorojano.
Or at least news media, search out for them. No one in the media has even contacted anybody else, or at least we haven't seen.
No, that would require a little work, and And, of course, some curiosity, wouldn't it? Okay, next item on the card is Phil versus Michael San Nicolas. Phil Leon Guerrero. Now, on Sunday, about 10 days ago, we had this story. I'm going to show you again. The story that ran front page on the Post. He did not help his case. Front page above the fold on the Sunday Post. And it's an interview of someone named Matt Herman, a longtime congressional staffer who worked for Congressman Madeline Bradallo. And he really lays it out pretty heavily on Michael San Nicolas. And the whole article is pretty one-sided. There isn't much in there about Michael San Nicolas's position in the matter. No interview of Michael San Nicolas, anyone representing him, etc. My hypothesis was that this is a story that really isn't a story. There was no precipitating event. San Nicolas' name or this matter had not come before the public. There wasn't anything going on in it. It was a manufactured story. And my suspicious mind tells me that Phil Leon Guerrero had the right idea. I'm going to call this guy who used to be Madeline's chief of staff and see if either he will talk to me or give me someone to talk to who will do a bad rap on Michael San Nicolas. Because there's nothing that brought Matt Herman into this stuff. He doesn't live here. As far as I know, he's never been here. He probably has a little case of sour grapes because Matt, he lost his job when Michael San Nicolas beat Madeline Bradallo.
His decade-long tenure.
Yeah, his decade-long tenure. So I just thought this was a classic hit piece on the part of the Post to go out and find this guy and run this really negative story about Michael San Nicolas. I hypothesized that it appeared under the new management, now that Henry Titano has taken over as the general manager, the Post was starting a side hustle. So it would be the Guam Daily Post newspaper and used hatchet store. The hatchets they used on their hatchet jobs, then Michael San Nicolas might be for sale. But they told us when that one came out, it would be a two-part series. Well, now we have the two-part series. We have the second part. And
14 days later.
14 days later, yeah. And here's how it go. Ethics probe, process, scrutinized, defended. Herman and lawyers at odds over congressional process. Now, that's the subheading. And, of course, the reporter that writes the story doesn't do the subheading, doesn't do the headline. But when you read that, it sounds like they were in court. They were at a forum. There was some give and take, that Herman would say something and the lawyers, whoever that was, would come back, right? Isn't that kind of what you thought it was, Jose?
But just a real quick point here, Bob. That usually the headlines or subheadlines are written by a copy editor, and there is an editor's note also. But it's written by Phil Leon Guerrero, who is the
executive editor. Yeah,
he should have said my note. This is the second part. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. It sounds like they got into a room together.
Yeah, yeah, some give and take, back and forth. Herman and lawyers at odds over congressional process. Well, you'll find out that it isn't even close. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, I'll start out with the editor's note. This is the second part of the Post's coverage of the July 14 interview with Matt Herman, a longtime congressional aide who served in a number of capacities for former Governor Leon Guerrero, Delegate Madeline Bordazzo, completing his decade-long tenure in 2017 as her chief of staff. Two parties with extensive experience with the Congress, lawyers hired by Michael San Nicolas on one side, and a veteran Democrat congressional staffer and adjunct professor in D.C., Matt Herman, on the other, have given contradicting interpretations about the process and the outcome of the ethics investigation in Guam's non-voting delegate in the U.S. House of Representatives. A report out of a bipartisan congressional committee led by 10 members of Congress from various states that was unanimously approved by all members has been forwarded. Now that's misleading. There was a subcommittee, and the subcommittee forwarded its report to the committee, which approved it. But this makes it look like a report out of a bipartisan congressional committee led by 10 members of Congress that was unanimously approved by all members has been forwarded to the Department of Justice. All members of the committee, not the Congress. Right. Concluding that there is substantial evidence San Nicolas committed a crime and tried to cover it up. Now, I'll come back to substantial evidence in a minute. The alleged conspiracy involves committee findings that San Nicolas filed a false or incomplete reports to the Federal Election Commission while also attempting to influence witnesses, including a donor who admitted he unknowingly gave illegally excessive contributions to the delegate's first congressional campaign. Legal principles like due process and parliamentary rules are among the points over which the two parties disagree. During Herman's interview, he honed in on what he felt were misleading process arguments, which sound plausible but aren't supported by the established procedures for Congress internal investigations and to potential wrongdoing by members. Quote, this is Herman, they brought up all these process arguments. Subquote, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. Actually, most of the things they complained about are what I would call faux, F-A-U-X, faux process problems. In other words, they're equating the House ethics process to a court of law, which is a false narrative, Herman said, of the arguments from San Nicolas and his lawyers. Herman, of course, is a lawyer. No, he's not. He's not a lawyer. Stanley Woodward, one of 2C-based attorneys representing San Nicolas, explained in a news conference that Guam's delegate has made it very clear he believes the ethics process serves an important purpose. Now, that's the first tip-off here. Stanley Woodward explained in a news conference. When was the news conference held?
About a month ago.
A few days before they interviewed Herman?
Oh, no.
No. It's the one that San Nicolas did on Facebook way back.
Way back.
Yeah. A news conference. That importance is one reason why they're taking issue with the report's referral to DOJ. It's in the Constitution that the House and only the House can discipline its own members. And if that process becomes tainted, that process becomes untrusted, then we the people lack or lose the ability to trust our houses of Congress to discipline themselves, Woodward said. Do you disagree with that, Jose? I certainly agree with that. And to be clear here, I'm not going to get into what San Nicolas did or what he didn't do, whether it's good or bad or anything. I'm really stuck on the process arguments myself. And when I went through the first article, I said it looked like a kangaroo court and a newspaper with an axe to grind. And now that we've got the second article, I have not changed my mind. So please don't say, yeah, but, San Nicolas gave the money back or he did this or that's true. So you draw your own conclusions on that. But regular listeners to Tall Tales know that one of the things that I spent a fair amount of time on are questions like this. Who gets to make the decision? How is the decision made? Oftentimes, for me anyhow, that's more important than what the decision was. A classic example, Bush versus Gore. I was a George Bush supporter. I wanted Bush to win the election. I wanted Bush to become president. I didn't want Al Gore to become president. And the Supreme Court, of course, they criticized Bush because he didn't get a majority vote. Well, he did. He won 5-4. The Supreme Court decided in favor of Bush and against Gore. Bush became president. I got the result I was looking for, but I was extremely angry about the way the Supreme Court handled it. The Supreme Court should not have touched that case with a 10-foot pole, and they've brought everlasting discredit upon themselves for doing it. So that's what I mean when I say oftentimes for me the primary interest is who gets to make the decision and how is the decision made? Because if the wrong people make it or the decision is wrongly made, even if it comes out the way I want it, I may be very critical of it. And that's where I am with this situation in Michael San Nicolas. Woodward said the team in San Nicolas were disheartened that the congressional report levied this salacious report against the congressman. But the House Ethics Court is not a court of law, Herman countered in his interview with the Daily Post. So this must have been a hard story for Phil to put together, or else it was an easy story. He sent he had the San Nicolas interview transcribed. He went through the printed copy with a yellow highlighter and said, "You need to prepare answers for this, Matt, because this is what I'm going to interview you about." It's not, it's not like watching a live debate and A says, Lincoln says X, Lincoln says, I'm not interested in abolishing slavery, and Douglas says popular sovereignty is the key. It's not one of those. It's one happened a long time ago, and the other one is a fishing interview, and Phil is going through and putting all the stuff together, and I'll let you decide who wins the Phil Leon Guerrero report. But the House ethics process is not a court of law, Herman countered in his interview with the Post. It's an entirely different process, and it doesn't have due process. Now, that's quite a mouthful. It doesn't have due process. Now, I would start out with the proposition that any governmental tribunal, has at least a small amount of a degree of a requirement of due process. If the person involved stands to lose life, liberty, or property. Now we stopped doing it here with the decision that overruled Roe versus Wade, but in the word liberty, we found courts have found all different kinds of things. That if your employer fired you and you weren't entitled to a hearing, I think this is probably still the law. You were entitled to a liberty interest hearing where you could tell your side of the story, and management would have to be there. So to say that there is no due process in this legislative tribunal, it just doesn't sit very well with me. It's not a court. It doesn't require that there be due process. In other words, we can use the most unfair, we can rely on hearsay, we can rely on triple hearsay. We don't have to tell the accused what it is that he's accused of, who the witness is against him, all of those things. We don't have to do any of that stuff. because this is Congress. Herman goes on and says, so they're trying to make false equivalencies to throw up these smoke screens and make it seem like, oh, they're out to get me, when in fact that is not the case. How cooperative the delegate and his lawyers were also depends on who you ask. And I think this might be really the crux of the story. St. Nicholas didn't come in and, genuflect, bow, scrape, show the proper demeanor before these folks. Who in the hell is he? He's just this young squirt from some island out in the Pacific. We are members of the United States House of Representatives. How dare you, Jose?
How dare you?
There's nothing wrong with asking that your due process rights be afforded when it comes time to an interview with the committee. For example, being represented by counsel, Woodward explained at the news conference. I wouldn't even dream of going before this tribunal without my lawyer, and I am a lawyer. The very last offer that the committee made to us about having a sit-down so the congressman could explain his position, the committee scheduled a time when we were unavailable to provide him with representation. They proceeded anyways and said, too bad. The congressman could either appear or not appear without his lawyer. That's not due process. Going on beyond due process, it's not fair. It's not the way anyone would want to be treated. I have higher expectations for members of the House of Representatives. This is not due process. This is forcing somebody to appear without allowing him the rights to which they are afforded. But then we're back again to Herman. You see how this works? But Herman, familiar with how House members are represented by lawyers, agreed with the committee that the legal objections raised by St. Nicholas counselors were designed to evade answering questions. Quote, oftentimes a lot of these law firms will tell members not to cooperate because they're afraid of getting them trapped with other stuff because they can bring up a whole host of things. Herman is kind of making the case for St. Nicholas. Yeah, that's why nobody wants to go in there without counsel, because once you're in there, they may dig down in their bag of tricks and pull up stuff that you had no inkling that they'd be talking about. Herman told the Post, the delegate was making the point, well, we didn't see the transcripts when the committee interviewed other people and St. Nicholas wasn't there. You aren't necessarily entitled to the transcripts, meaning maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But you're such a smart ass, we're not going to give them to you. So he is probably afraid of what could be or what other questions could be raised that might come out of a subsequent investigation. I'd be afraid too. Let's head for Wrigley Field. See what's going on.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle. Darryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits. Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Okay, so here we are. Back to Herman and the lawyer. Oftentimes, now this is skylarking. Herman tells Phil Leongrero. Oftentimes, a lot of these law firms tell members not to cooperate because they're afraid of getting them trapped with other staff because they can bring up a whole host of things. How does Herman know that? Does he sit in on a lot of these? Is it going back to the time that Madeline Berdallo herself was in the disciplinary process for 2 different reasons? But this is just something that he's making up. That sounds good. Oftentimes, Herman told the Post, the delegate was making the point, well, we didn't see the transcripts. You aren't necessarily entitled to transcripts. Sometimes we give them, sometimes we don't. So he was probably afraid of what could be or what other questions could be raised that come out of a subsequent investigation. I'd be afraid too. Based on how events unfolded, Herman believes the stonewalling was not just to impede an investigation, it was to shield San Nicolas. So the lawyers, because they're there to protect their client, had told him very clearly, don't cooperate. That's what happened, Herman said. Now, how does Herman know this? Is Herman a mind reader?
He was a decades-long staffer.
Yeah. Now this is verges on yellow journalism to put this in print. So the lawyers, because they're there to protect their client, had told him very clearly, don't cooperate. How does he know that? Do we have 2 sources on that one, Phil? Do we have notes? Did Herman do a wiretap on the lawyers? Or is this Herman just spouting off, piling on?
Emerson's attorney set up shop at Watergate.
Yeah. The investigative subcommittee, or ISC, looking into the delegates' potential ethics violations and San Nicolas colleagues on the bipartisan ethics committee unanimously agreed that the lack of engagement was designed to stall the process, calling just one of the delegates' hollow commitments yet another delay tactic. The committee pointed out that it advised the delegate of the option to provide a written statement in response to the allegations under oath, but he never did. The congressional report further noted the investigation at the time had been pending for over 2 years. Well, why was that? Who controlled the pace of the investigation? During which time San Nicolas never substantially, I like that word, substantial, never substantively responded to most of the allegations raised against him. The investigative subcommittee determined, and the congressional committee agreed, that San Nicolas' behavior was contemptuous. I think when you're talking about that kind of contempt, the correct word is actually contumacious. In the nearly 2.5 years that the committee and the ISC spent investigating Delegate San Nicolas' conduct, he was afforded numerous opportunities to respond to the allegations under review. Although his counsel stated that he welcomed the opportunity to do so, he repeatedly failed to meaningfully address the issues before the ISC, and his actions suggest this failure was deliberate. Now, I'm going to stop here for a second. How does Herman know all this stuff? Herman is not a party here. He doesn't have a dog in the fight.
Nope.
I suppose he has a passing interest in it, but how does he concentrate on it to the point that he's willing to go head to head with the lawyer on all of these issues, which are not easy issues? Must have done a lot of preparation to get ready for his interview by Phil Leongrero.
I think he just provided his bio.
Mm-hmm. The report stated, as it were, despite the ISC's repeated attempts at collegiality, this is Herman again, San Nicolas showed disrespect for his peers and the House ethics process, causing the ISC to determine that the interests of justice would not be served if it allowed its investigation to continue to be hindered by San Nicolas delay tactics and disingenuous pledges to cooperate. This is a quote from Herman. It's a quote from somebody. So they didn't like it, so their answer was, we're just going to quit. We're going to stop. Yeah. The committee also...
We pass.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
The committee also concluded it was an extraordinary step to refer a sitting delegate of the House to another federal authority. However, Delegate San Nicolas has engaged in extraordinary conduct, not only with respect to excessive campaign contribution and his efforts to influence witness testimony, but also with respect to his failure to meaningfully address the allegations before the committee and by contemptuously ignoring a duly authorized subpoena. So there you go. A nice even-handed article, right? Thank goodness for Matt Herman. We wouldn't know all of these things. Matt Herman must have made almost an occupation out of following this to be able to respond to Phil Leandro's questions like this, right? Now, the committee never found him guilty of anything, and one of our readers here tells us that at the conclusion of the House disciplinary process, there are several things they could do: expulsion, censure, or reprimand, right? Loss of seniority, suspension, or loss of certain privileges. They didn't do any of these things to San Nicolas. Not a thing.
They passed.
They passed. And then, but, you know, for the average reader, well, we're going to send this to the Department of Justice. They prosecute people for criminal activities. So they're using every trick in the book. They, meaning Herman, Phil, and this committee, to paint San Nicolas in as unfavorable a light as they possibly could, which really isn't necessary because he did a pretty good job himself. But that's what they've done. We found substantial evidence of 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, we're referring it to the Department of Justice. Wow, they found substantial evidence. I keep going back to this. Substantial evidence is the lowest standard of proof. This is what it means. Substantial evidence means that degree of relevant evidence which a reasonable person, considering the record as a whole, might accept as adequate to support a conclusion, even though other reasonable persons might disagree. That's not bulletproof. Other reasonable persons might disagree. So you bring this over and give it to the Department of Justice, say, hey, Harry, you're a prosecutor, take this. What do I got? Well, you got substantial evidence. You know, I can't get an indictment on substantial evidence. Is that all they've got? What do they think I'm going to do? Put on my deer stalker hat? Pretend that I'm Sherlock Holmes? And go back and write a sequel to The Silver Blade, basing my case, you know, and I can see a lot of what the House Ethics Committee is doing there. It's not based on what San Nicolas did. It's what San Nicolas didn't do. Yeah. I guess out there in Guam, they don't understand the meaning of the word kowtow. But they should, because they're a lot closer to China than we are. Nice job. Nice job, everybody involved. Matt Herman, Phil Leon Guerrero, House Ethics Committee, Michael San Nicolas, etc. So whatever happens to San Nicolas happens to him. People can decide whether he did something wrong or did not, whether it's, it's the kind of thing that would cause them not to vote for him. But as far as I'm concerned, what the House Ethics Committee did and didn't do is not a good enough reason to make any kind of a decision on it all, except I would never want to have to deal with a House Ethics Committee. That's That's for darn sure. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Project Inspire and the Guam Dance Community presents
Made to Move,
a community dance event. Sunday, July 31st at the Agana Shopping Center. Pull up in your dancing shoes because we're dedicating this entire day to dance. This full-day event will have fun community dance workshops, a grand premiere of the film, and an all-out after-party. A portion of the proceeds will benefit Guam Cancer Care. Tickets are now available at www.projectinspire.co. And follow us on the gram at Project Inspire for updates on the event.
Made to Move.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. The home stretch, 6 furlongs. I'll be crossing the finish line out of my way out of here for another Thursday. I happened to notice Colin Clark was referring to Herman. I think he was probably defending Herman by saying that Herman was in touch with his spiritual healer. So I wonder if there's a co-San Nicolas dimension to what's going on here. Okay, next item on the card is Michigan versus Harbaugh. This is a matter that I started a couple days ago, wasn't able to finish. This is back to the national scene again. The headline here is, quote, "He's a public employer. Fire his ass." Critics call for Harbaugh to be canned for coming out as pro-life. Wow. Football coaches can't do that. University of Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh is facing calls for his termination after he went public with his pro-life views. Harbaugh is a devout Catholic and said, "I believe in having the courage to let the unborn be born." The response has been overwhelming and furious, but it's unlikely that Harbaugh, who just signed a 5-year, $36 million contract, will be canned. It's an interesting comparison to the successful campaign recently to force NFL coach to withdraw his comments about January 6th. That guy's name was Del Rio. You remember his first name? No.
I'll find out.
Yeah. It should be, his first name should be Puente. You know what Puente means? Puente. Bridge.
Oh, bridge.
Puente del Rio. Yeah. Okay. If the critics had their way, both coaches would be fired for holding dissenting views on such issues. Harbaugh spoke at Plymouth's Right to Life dinner on Sunday and reportedly shared his own religious beliefs in favor of life. "I love life. I believe in having loving care and respect for life and death. My faith and my science are what drives these beliefs in me. Before I formed," and this is from Jeremiah 1.5, "before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as prophet to the nations." There are many things one may hold to be immoral, but government appropriately allows because of some greater good or personal constitutional right. Ultimately, I don't believe that is the case with abortion. Yes, there are conflicts between legitimate rights of the mother and the rights of the unborn child. One resolution might involve incredible hardship for the mother, family, and society. Another results in the death of an unborn person. In God's plan, each unborn human truly has a future filled with potential, talent, dreams, and love, Harbaugh said. I have living proof in my family, my children, and the many thousands that I've coached that the unborn are an amazing gifts from God to make this world a better place. To me, the right choice is to have the courage to let the unborn be born. That's as far as I got last time. Harbaugh is used to calls for unnecessary roughness, but nothing likely prepared him for what came next. The reaction was immediate and unhinged. Harbaugh was accused of being full of deep, seething hatred of women. You know, it must be tough to work for these big time comedians, you know, like Jimmy Kimmel and some of these other guys being joke writers, when there are so many amateurs out here, they're trying their hand at it. Despite his explanation of his deep-seated religious view in favor of life, various people accused him of publicly expressing his distaste for women's rights. Now, the only way that comes out right is this. You must advance this position. Every woman who becomes pregnant has an absolute right to kill her unborn baby inside her. Everyone. And if you don't, then you hate women. Others call for Harbaugh to be fired for holding a pro-life view shared by millions of citizens. And then the F word, Jim Harbaugh, maybe the University of Michigan 86 him before his contract goes full term. That's what you see written around the campus. The liberal Palmer Report posted with thousands of likes. That was posted by the Palmer Report. No one who actively attempts to deny women their most basic rights, should ever be allowed to hold a position of influence at a public university. That includes University of Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh and his anti-woman fundraising. He's a public employee. Fire his ass. It's one thing to hold this personal view if you could keep it separate from your actions. Pay no attention to that part of the Constitution called the First Amendment. But to use your clout as a public employee to go out and do fundraisers for groups that actively seek to deny women their most basic rights is a whole different ballgame. To use your clout. Yeah. He should have done something that's non-controversial, like kneeling during the Star-Spangled Banner, right? That's a proper use of your clout. The ease with which many move to censorship is vividly on display in these statements. Some critics make a passing gesture toward free speech and then say that this is no longer a personal view because Harbaugh is well known. Under that approach, any public comment could be viewed as using your clout as a public employee. Thus you can presumably speak in favor of life if you are unknown, but not if you're a known figure. Of course, the same conditional right to free speech would not apply to Harbaugh if he were to offer pro-choice views, or Coach Del Rio if he were to support the J6 committee. Those views cannot only be expressed, but will receive widespread acclaim for a coach being a leader and a mentor to others. Fortunately, as a public university, Michigan is subject to full weight of the First Amendment, even if it wanted to tackle the contractual challenges to termination. Yet the vile rhetoric directed at Harbaugh should, even in this age of rage, give some pause. To label all pro-life supporters as anti-women is unfounded and unfair. Millions of women support limiting or barring abortions. They're not self-haters or anti-feminists. Harbaugh gave a heartfelt and honest speech about his faith and commitment to the pro-life cause. This is part of a debate that will now unfold in 50 states as voters decide where to draw the line on abortion services. It's a debate that should be passionate on both sides, but we should be able to disagree without such personal attacks or calls for termination. Indeed, a state employee should be able to hold a pro-life view while holding a job at the University of Michigan. Boy, I don't know who wrote this thing, but he's really out of touch, you know. He probably doesn't understand that the left has explained to us that speech can be violence. If you are against inclusion, diversity, and equity, and you come out and publicly say that, your speech is violent. And people have not only a right but a duty to shut you up. It's something that Herbert Marcuse made available to us in the 60s. It's called selective tolerance. We tolerate all of the speech that's in line with, where is it here? We tolerate all the speech that's in line with our views, but we're absolutely intolerant of views of anybody saying anything that does not go along with our views. So, you know, if you come along and say, man, that's a nice bowl of orange rice, that could be violence.
Now, again, the speech used never describes what the coach is against.
No.
Only a euphemism, clearly to avoid telling the rest of that author's audience that the life of a baby has been snuffed out.
Exactly.
Hence why the coach said, I will adopt that baby.
Mm-hmm.
But they never say that throughout this whole argument. In fact, they keep repeating denial of women's rights, denial of women's rights.
Yeah. If you say it long enough, maybe some people will start to believe it, right? Okay, we got about 3 minutes to go here. I don't want to start something else. Let me just say, who's saying what on Facebook? This is from Bonnie Suba. This is about her last post. This crap happens when so-called leaders yell out for the detention, as it were the destruction, of pro-life women's centers and calling for harassment of our highest court justices, Warren, Harris, Pelosi, Schumer, AOC, Tlaib, Omar, and the Democratic governors. She's absolutely right. You know, and when people like this, people in positions of authority come out and say the things that they've been saying, it's not a surprise that we find, you know, people ought to know better kind of falling in line with it and kind of succumbing to it. Let's see, Bonnie Suba. Let's see, we've got Simon Sanchez going on a different track. He says that the NAS well also had perchloroethylene in it, and it was this chemical that shut down the well initially. PFOS came along after 2016 when U.S. EPA issued new rules about it. My main point is that PFOS exist in water system resources everywhere, including systems that are near airports. Well, thanks, Simon, for helping me finish up the show here. It's that time again. It's time for me to say, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM, and 104.3 HD3.
Will it say recession? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Just hours from now, the Commerce Department releases its gross domestic product report for the second quarter. If it's a negative number, which many analysts believe it will mark 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. That traditionally has meant recession, but the White House still refuting that.
The textbook definition of recession is not 2 negative quarters of GDP.
Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, House Minority Whip Congressman Steve Scalise of Louisiana says the administration needs to stop with the semantics and take accountability.
The first step to fixing any kind of crisis is to first admit the crisis, admit the problem that he's created, and he won't do it. Joe Biden won't look the American people in the eye and admit that his programs have failed.
The Federal Reserve Board yesterday hiking its key interest rate 0.75 of a point for the second month in a row. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell.
We're trying to do just the right amount, right? We're not trying to have a recession, and we don't think we have to. We think that there's a path for us to be able to bring inflation down while sustaining a strong labor market.
Senate Majority Leader Schumer and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin have reached an agreement to revive portions of the president's multi-billion-dollar spending plan.
Manchin announced he'll support an Inflation Reduction Act aimed at reducing health care and energy costs as ways of driving down inflation. In a statement, Manchin didn't give clear specifics on the deal, but said it was past time to get serious on reducing inflation. Republican senators are reacting, saying Manchin flip-flopped on the measure. Texas GOP Senator John Cornyn, in his statement, says the agreement will still be devastating to American families. While Manchin did agree to support inflation reduction, he ended any hope for a signature Biden proposal, saying, "Build Back Better" is dead.
Fox's Gernal Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. New from the Fox News Podcasts Network, Dana Perino, co-host of the 5 and America's Newsroom on Fox News Channel, returns to the world of audio with a new limited-time podcast, Everything Will Be Okay with Dana Perino. Building off the success of her best-selling book of the same name, Dana provides an unequaled brand of advice built on real-life experience and interviews experts and individuals that make a difference in the lives of others. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tonight's the annual Congressional Baseball Game, the event designed to raise money for charity, but there have been threats made.
Capitol Police took to social media to say it will not allow violence or unlawful behavior during the Congressional Baseball Game. The cops say they're aware of demonstrators planning to protest political issues. Chief Tom Manger wrote, "We urge